Folks, listen carefully because what I'm about to share is something millions of Americans have been waiting to hear. After months of silence, delays, and political back and forth, the $1 to $400 stimulus checks are finally back on the table. But before you get too excited, here's the shocking part. The rules have changed, and these new rules will decide who actually gets the money and who will once again be left empty handed. Now, most people think stimulus checks are just automatic. They hear the word approved and assume money will simply land in their bank account. But that's not the case anymore. Washington has quietly slipped in new qualifications, new income limits, and even new restrictions that could completely disqualify millions of seniors, low income families, and even people living on Social Security, SSI, and SSDI. That's right. The very people who need these checks the most could be excluded unless they know exactly what to do. So today I'm breaking it all down for you. Who qualifies, who doesn't, what deadlines you need to pay attention to, and the one critical step you must take to make sure your $400 doesn't vanish before it ever reaches your hands. Because here's the truth, these payments are real, they are coming, but they won't be automatic. And unless you understand the new rules, you could miss out entirely. Let's start with the basics. The government is once again pushing out a $1,400 stimulus check. But unlike the original stimulus payments we saw in 2021, these are not blanket payments for everyone. The eligibility has been tightened, the income caps are lower. And for the first time ever, certain groups who previously qualified might now be left out. For example, single filers who make above $75,000 will see their payments reduced, and those above $90,000 completely cut off. Married couples face similar rules with checks tapering off after $150,000 in combined income. But here's the kicker. Even if you fall below those thresholds, you might still not get your money if you haven't filed your most recent tax returns. That's right. For seniors who live entirely on Social Security and don't usually file taxes, this could create huge delays. The IRS is requiring up-to-date information, meaning if your address, your bank account, or even your filing status has changed, you could be pushed to the back of the line. And I need you to think about what that means. Imagine seniors on fixed incomes, veterans waiting for support, or families living paycheck to paycheck. People who need this money right now. They could be waiting weeks or even months while others who file quickly jump to the front of the line. Now, here's another shocking twist. Unlike the earlier stimulus checks, this new $1 to $400 payment has what's being called a work requirement clause. This doesn't mean everyone has to have a job, but it does mean the government wants to see proof of income or proof of benefit eligibility. That means people on SSI and SSDI will need to make sure their benefits are properly updated in the system. Veterans will need to make sure the VA has their correct information. And if you're self-employed, you'll need to show proof through your taxes. In other words, the days of automatic checks landing in your account without lifting a finger are over. Now it's about proving you qualify under the new rules. And this brings me to the question everyone is asking, what about seniors? What about people living only on Social Security? Well, here's the good news. Seniors are included. But here's the bad news. Not all seniors. The government is now splitting seniors into groups. Those with direct deposit set up through the SSA system will get their payments the fastest. Those who rely on paper checks or who don't have updated information may face long delays or risk being left out entirely. And if you're a senior living with a spouse or dependent, the income rules apply to the household, meaning if your household income is above the new cap, you may not qualify, even if your personal Social Security check is small. This is one of the most controversial parts of the plan because many argue it unfairly punishes seniors who live with working family members. But it doesn't stop there. There's also a new rule about dependents. In the past, children and adult dependents were included in the stimulus plan. This time, dependents will only qualify if they are under 17 or classified under specific disability categories. That means many college students, adult children living at home, and elderly dependents may not qualify. Now, here's something most news outlets are not talking about: the deadlines. These checks are being rolled out in phases, and if you miss the registration window, you could lose your place in line. The IRS has quietly set up a system for people to update their information, but they aren't exactly advertising it. Why? Because the government is trying to limit the number of errors and duplicate payments. So, unless you're actively paying attention and unless you know exactly where to update your details, you could easily miss your 1 400. And let me remind you, 1 400 is not pocket change. For millions of people, that's the difference between paying rent or facing eviction, between buying groceries or going hungry, between filling a prescription or skipping doses. So, let's talk about what you need to do step by step. First, check your eligibility. If you're single, your income must be below $75,000. If you're married, below $150,000 combined. If you're a head of household, below $112,500. If you fall above those, your payment will shrink and eventually disappear. Second, make sure your tax returns are filed and up to date. If you haven't filed for 2023 yet, do it now. The IRS is basing eligibility on your most recent tax filing, and if they don't have it, you could be skipped. Seniors, even if you don't normally file, you should consider submitting a simplified return to make sure your details are in the system. Third, check your payment method. Direct deposit is fastest. Paper checks and debit cards take longer. If you've moved recently, make sure the IRS and SSA have your current address. If your bank account has changed, update it immediately, otherwise your payment could bounce back. Fourth, keep documentation ready. Whether it's your Social Security benefit letter, your VA statement, or your 1099 form, make sure you can prove your eligibility. If there are disputes, this documentation will be critical. Now, I want to pause for a moment and address the reality of what's happening here. The government is not just giving out free money anymore. They are tightening the rules because they want to control who gets help. And unfortunately, that means the people who aren't paying attention, the people who assume it will just happen, are going to be left behind. But that doesn't have to be you. You're here, you're paying attention, and that puts you ahead of millions of others. If you take these steps now, you can make sure your $1 check actually arrives. Let's talk about the timeline. Payments are expected to roll out in 3 waves. The first wave will go to those with direct deposit setup and recent tax filings. The second wave will go to Social Security, SSI, SSDI, and VA beneficiaries. The third wave will cover paper checks and debit cards. Each wave could be separated by weeks, meaning those in the third wave may not see payments until late in the rollout. But here's the part that worries me most. The government is also introducing what they call a review system. That means some payments will be held up for extra verification. If there are discrepancies, maybe your income doesn't match, or your bank account has issues, your payment could be flagged. And once that happens, it could take months to resolve. So, again, preparation is everything. Don't wait until it's too late. Now, I know many of you are asking, will this be the last stimulus check? And while no one can say for certain, insiders are suggesting that this $1 payment is being framed as the final round. Officials are pointing to improved job numbers and a recovering economy as reasons why future payments may not be needed. But here's the contradiction. Millions of Americans are still struggling. Inflation has not gone away. Grocery prices are still climbing, rent is at record highs, and healthcare costs don't even get me started. So while Washington may be saying this is the last round, the reality is if enough pressure builds, another round could still happen. But for now, you cannot count on anything beyond this 2,400. That's why it is so important to make sure you don't miss it. Friends, let me leave you with this. The $1,400 stimulus checks are back, but they are not automatic. The rules have changed, and if you don't adapt to those rules, you risk losing out. Check your eligibility, update your information, file your taxes, secure direct deposit, and be ready to provide proof. Because at the end of the day, this money is not just a check, it's survival. And if Washington wants to make it harder to get, then we need to be smarter and faster to make sure we do. Stay alert, stay informed, and don't let your $1 400 slip through the cracks.